This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock, joined by Representative Vivian Flowers. She is a Democrat from Pine Bluff. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You're a regular on the show, too, so
I'll
it's
take
always
that.
good. But you've got some opposition to the casino proposal that's out there, and that is what you're here to talk to us about today.
Yeah.
So you live in Jefferson County. Obviously,
do.
Jefferson County could benefit in terms of getting a casino if this issue 4 passes, but you're opposed to it. Tell me why you're opposed.
So it is not. It's not religious and it's not moral. I gamble. I frequent, not frequently, but I frequent casinos, and I want jobs for my area. But I don't think that we should trade off for a bad deal for the state and a bad deal for my area when it could be better. And it has not been that I have been completely closed. I have remained open, and really until the first day of early vote, in an attempt to try to work with the leaders of this effort to make sure that there are protections and development investments in Pine Bluff, Jefferson County. I think that's really, really important, given 2 things that are just huge, huge, huge. Number one, this is not an initiated act where if we don't get it right, we can go back and tweak it and make a change in the legislature.
Amendment.
It's a constitutional amendment. So if we get it wrong, the likelihood of us, the legislature or the people, ever going back to make a change, given the millions of dollars that we're seeing, pour into the state to make this change, is highly unlikely. I would even, dare I say, impossible.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you said that there's some things that could make it better. What do you think could have made this a better proposal?
Well, and let me give you the second thing that made it horrible to me, and that is the super low tax rate on casinos. So you're writing this as a self-interested bill or amendment to our Constitution, and then you're setting up a super low tax rate on yourself compared to other states and other areas across the country.
That's not to say that the state legislature couldn't impose a new tax of a different variety on the casino.
Not this legislature. We like revenue neutral these days.
It's possible. So.
And also just given the really strong lobby, that would ensue. I just don't see that happening, and I don't think that we should make that kind of change to the Constitution without putting adequate provisions in the amendment for the state and then for the most affected counties. Why would we go behind and say, hey, what can you do for us later?
Right. So tell me what you think could improve the amendment proposal. If there was this A, B, C in there, what would A, B, or C be? So
a couple of things. I think number one, adequate resources to address problem gambling and other social impacts that, from the research that I have been able to see and that the Bureau of Legislative Research helped me gather, that we know come along with gambling. It is not something that is conjecture or a worry. We know that problem gambling, gambling addiction, and then those things that are tied to it, like alcoholism and like domestic abuse, those are concerns. And even if it's for a very small population, 5% or 6%, that's still a huge ramification to the community. But
why could that not be, and I'm playing devil's advocate with you here, why could that not be done statutorily, though? There's nothing that would prevent the state legislature from imposing a help hotline and putting some significant money or resources into that.
Just like what we see with all issues, and you know this, when you start talking about creating a statute, creating a new program or a new stream, the next question is, where's the money going to come from? And, for years, we had $200,000 available for the lottery for these concerns that were raised, which was extremely low and inadequate even then. And even then with the $200,000, and this is from research that I've gathered recently, we were still at the bottom of the totem pole for states that did provide resources. And so, if we don't do it now and take those dollars from revenue that will be generated based upon gambling for problems that we know gambling or casinos will contribute to or create, trying to come behind as a legislature and say, hey, let's find $1 million or let's find $1.5 million to deal with problem gambling.
Let's get it from the casinos. I mean, again, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Right.
I feel like the legislature could impose its will if if casinos were here. And again, I mean, this is contingent upon it passing. So now you voted to pull that funding before, but you mentioned that you didn't even think $200,000 was enough money. Right?
Absolutely, it wasn't enough.
Yeah. How much is enough?
And let me say, let me speak to the, I voted to pull the funding.
All right.
So we have numerous budget bills, and it is very easy for a budget bill to be presented, and especially the budget for the lottery, and a line item be moved in there. And I promise you, when Alan Clark presented that bill, he didn't say, or whoever carried it in the House didn't say, we're going to remove money for the gambling hotline to move it over here for scholarships.
On principle, you would have stood up for that.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
So one of the arguments for allowing more casinos in Arkansas, and particularly one in Jefferson County, is that people go to Mississippi now. And you mentioned you frequent some casinos.
Absolutely.
Why let that tax revenue go to Mississippi, which is the argument? Why not keep it here, even if it's not enough in your estimation?
I would love to see those dollars come here. But again, we don't want to take a few dollars. And let's go back. Let's also point out that there are tax dollars that we would be giving up, I believe, for the next 4 years at the tune of $34 million. So
from Oaklawn and
Southland,
which would get a lower tax rate as well.
For sure. And so it's kind of like, give us a little something, and we'll take the problems that come along with it, and maybe find the money later to deal with them. And it's very easy, I think, for people outside of Jefferson County to say, be happy for what you can get now, and maybe we'll get you some money to deal with the problems that come along with it later. Mm-hmm. In a city that already has issues and challenges with economic decline and population decline, I just think there are too many variables out there for what could happen that would be detrimental. I mean, I think that we can look at Tunica as an example and see that there was a huge spike in job growth, and there were monies generated that went to improving
roads and
the
schools.
Roads and well, not necessarily school. Well, that improve schools, but not necessarily education. Yeah. And I think if you talk to people in Helena, West Helena, if you talk to people in Tunica, or if you go into the downtown area in Tunica, the kind of growth and glitz and glamour that you see when you go to the resorts is not what you see in the community for the people who live there. So another point that I would make is that there's a promise of all of these jobs, but there are no I don't even want to call priorities or even goals mentioned to ensure that those jobs go to the people in the local area. We see those issues crop up when we're talking about bringing any company in. But again, we're making a change to our Constitution with corporate specific protections to ensure, on monopolies, if you will, and there are no protections for the people. And in particular, for me and my interest, the people of Jefferson County. Yeah. And so I would not want to see the promise of all of these jobs, and there's not even a stated commitment to say, we'll work with UAPB and CARC to make sure that in the years that we're building, that we are working on adequate worker training. You know, to their credit, Southland does that with the local community college. They do that so that the people there can be trained to work in that area. And there was no commitment here. And I just think, you know, the analogy that I've been using is it's just like, you know, someone saying, hey, I have a car that you can buy, and it will be a great car. It'll give you lots of miles, and it's beautiful, and it has, you know, great stats. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much it's going to cost, but I can tell you I'm going to give you a really good price, and you're really going to benefit from it. I don't have a Carfax for you, and I'm not going to tell you the previous owners or whether or not it's been in any accidents. We know that some of those issues occur in that vehicle, but go ahead and sign this contract, and then we'll figure out the details later.
Well, it is a bid process, though. So, I mean,
For
nobody's
sure.
got the guarantee that it would happen again if it passes. So, if it fails, you don't have any of these issues to deal with. If on November 6th, if issue 4 fails, you don't have to deal with this. If it passes, what will you do after that?
I think that
Will you
these
seek some of these
issues,
commitments?
these issues will still remain, and I think that if we don't make, I don't even want to call it demands, but if we don't insist on these things that I think will be necessary for there to be a great benefit for the people, then it won't be an issue. I think there won't be any pressure to deal with it. So, I was not necessarily invited at the table in the year and a half that all of this was going on anyway. Yeah. And it's not a political benefit for me to go against this, but I feel very strongly that if the people in my area are to benefit, if it did pass, that it's my job to do the research, it's my job to share the information, and it's my job to make sure and push for those protections and those things that can be done.
I got a feeling you'll find a way to make that a contingency for that county judge and that mayor to have to sign a document if it passes.
Well,
again,
and I think that I know for a fact, I mean, I support my mayor. I love my mayor. I helped my mayor when she ran for her election, and I think she's a good mayor. And I think that she's doing what she needs to do, and I'm doing what I need to do. And I know for a fact that she was concerned about that agreement not being solidified prior to the election. And I know because we put pressure and had those questions, those conversations were held. Yeah. MOU did not result from it, but it could and should have been. And to say that something like that would be premature, if you can do pay an architect to do renderings and tell me how it looks, you can say, if we get this license, these are some of the things that we promise that we are going to work with your mayor, with your county judge on, so that we can see some development in the area. With all of the issues that we have in Pine Bluff, and now we will be competing with 3 other full-scale casinos in the state, I think that it is an abomination to say we're going to put a casino in there, not provide resources for social impacts, and not create agreements to create the kind of development that needs to be created to make it a real destination. Because without that, who is going to pass Hot Springs to come to our destination without the same kind of development that we've seen in Hot Springs?
All right. We'll see how voters feel about this issue on November 6th.
If
Next
I could
Tuesday.
say one other thing, too.
I'm going to give you the final word
One
here.
other thing.
Come on.
If it doesn't pass, I promise you they'll come back to the table. I believe that the Quapaw really want to be in Pine Bluff. I believe that the Cherokee either want to be there or want to make sure that if they're not there, no one's there. But I believe the Quapaw really do want to be there, but I think that we don't have to settle for a 13% tax for the state and then a small percentage of that pie. So I don't think we lose anything by saying, hey, let's go back to the drawing board. They've spent $10 million, which is over $10 million for the legal and advertising, and that's a drop in the bucket for the billions that they would stand to gain if we changed our amendment for them to come and build a casino in Jefferson County.
All right, Representative Vivian Flowers, always good to be with you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for tuning in. That's all for today's program. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
You'll find us at the end of a lot of long country roads, covering over 60% of the great state of Arkansas. Our 17 electric distribution cooperatives are working day and night to provide reliable, affordable power to over 500,000 homes, farms, and businesses, just like yours. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, your local energy partners.